Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nana from Tracking 202. And today I have Justin Mares from the Traction book. He's a co-author with Gabriel Weinberg, who you may know as the founder of DuckDuckGo. Um, Today we've got a really informative training for you. I thought that we'd do something that's out of the normal affiliate type training, but still something that's highly relevant to your interests. So, Justin, um, why don't you take it away and we can get started.
Awesome. So basically, I am the co-author of a book that came out about 3 weeks ago. It's called Traction Book. It's about how startups and marketers can get traction for their businesses. Outside of that, previously I was running growth, so I was in charge of sales and marketing at a SaaS developer tools company. We got acquired by Rackspace for 8 figures about a year and a half ago, and I since have left Rackspace and worked on pushing out this book. So basically, I just want to go through a quick, like 10 to 15 minute run through of some of the ideas in the book, some of the principles that I've used and other successful founders have used to approach and think about the process of getting traction.
Hmm.
And then we'll wrap up with questions, Q&A, and like would love to dig in and hear what some of you guys are working on.
All right,
So
sounds
does that
good.
sound good?
Yeah, and I hope you're going to go over what traction means in your context because traction is not a word that's used much in the affiliate industry. I know like a lot of
Absolutely.
startups. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to cover is exactly what traction is. And so
Hmm.
traction it's used pretty often in startups, but essentially what it is, it's real customer growth or real growth on a metric that is important to your business. So if you're trying to pump up your revenue, traction would mean a growth in the amount of revenue you have coming in. If you're trying to get a bunch of installs for like a mobile app or something like that, traction would be the number of people you have installing your app and actually using it. And so when we say, get traction, we mean getting meaningful, like driving meaningful customer interactions or revenue in an area that you care about and that you're trying to optimize. So for a lot of internet marketers, that might be getting a bunch of people to sign up for your email list or increasing the number of people that end up buying after you do a product push or whatever it is. So the what I want to cover is like that is essentially what traction is, and then we're quickly go over how some of the top startups in the world have approached this process of getting traction, and then how that same process is actually applicable to smaller businesses, internet marketers, all of these kinds of businesses that care about and worry about how to get more customers. Because I mean, at the core, that's what a lot of people want to figure out. That's why a lot of internet marketing even exists. Is like
Right.
the product creators just need help marketing their businesses.
Hmm.
And so the first thing I want to do is this guy is a quote has an amazing quote. This guy's in Evolve. He founded a company called Angel List, and he has a quote where he says, "Traction is like the Supreme Court definition of porn, in that you know it when you see it. Like if your startup or email list or whatever is growing rapidly, if your product is selling well, you know the feeling and you know that things are going well, like you know that you're getting traction. So though it may change across different kinds of businesses, it also it's a meaningful thing that often the founders, marketers, whoever understands when things are going well and when they aren't. So the first thing that I want to cover is that there are essentially 19 different channels that startups, founders, marketers can use to acquire customers. So if you go to tractionbook.com, you can see we have all the channels listed at the bottom of the website. But basically, we did a bunch of research. We talked to over 40 founders. We had journalists doing some research for us, and we found that all companies essentially acquire customers through 19 different ways. And so these 19 channels, they basically, startups have used them at one time or another to grow into a successful business. So some startups have grown on the backs of getting a bunch of PR, doing partnerships, and the like. Others have grown by using affiliates or doing paid acquisition. It just really depends on the type of startup you have, how much money you make per customer, and all these different things, which we can get into later. But essentially, there are only 19 ways that startups, marketers can acquire customers. So what this means for you as a marketer is that there's a finite number of ways that you can actually acquire someone. And this is a good thing because, as we'll see, we'll get into the process that most successful startups don't come out of the gate with a surefire user acquisition strategy. Instead, they go through a process of figuring out what customer acquisition channels make sense for them and what actually moves the needle for them and for their business. So that brings me to the next slide. So people, I'm sure you all know this as well, especially working with customers or people who own products and want to use affiliates, that a lot of people, I would say most, honestly, just try things blindly. Like, you'll have a product, you'll have a marketing strategy, whatever it is, and they'll just throw things at the wall. Like, they'll read a blog post that HubSpot churns out and try posting something on their blog. They do that once a month, and then they're surprised when that doesn't work. Or they try running a Facebook ads, and they spend $50 or $100 on it a month. Like, there's just, most people don't approach marketing with a sense of strategy of like, here is what we're going to try to do, and we are going to go with what works the best. Like, if you talk to a founder or someone about, what is on our product roadmap, like, almost everyone can say, okay, we're going to build this feature, and then we're going to do this. If you ask someone the same thing around marketing, like, what channels are you going to try? What experiments are you going to run? What do you think is likely the best way for you to acquire customers? Oftentimes they're just speechless. And so rather than just trying things blindly, we are advocating an approach, which I'll get to later, called the Bullseye framework, which is a very easy way to help you distill and focus in on the one or two traction channels that will actually make sense for your business. So what we found after doing our research is that founders and marketers often fall into groupthink. So if you're a marketer, oftentimes you are focused on and only thinking about channels that you have experience with. So, a lot of times that means that you are doing the same things that everyone else is. Paid acquisition, you're doing content marketing, you're doing affiliates, whatever it is. And so what this does is this can work really well in some cases if you're really good at essentially beating the competition and optimizing the heck out of certain channels. But where this doesn't work is if you have a different product, a different customer segment, and you can only try channels that you've used in the past or that your competition is using. So one of the strongest things, and we had multiple people that we interviewed say this, including Paul English, who started the website kayak.com. He mentioned that if you can acquire customers in a way that your competitors aren't or can't, that's just a massive competitive advantage. And so, we talk about it's very, very easy for founders and marketers to be biased towards channels that they have experience with. And so, if what you should do is you basically go through this process where, again, we cover it in the Bullseye framework, where you evaluate each of the 19 traction channels that might make sense for your business, and then really do a deep dive and run tests on the ones that seem the most promising, as it's really hard to predict which channels will work and which won't. So Peter Thiel is a billionaire, venture capitalist, first investor in Facebook, started PayPal and Palantir, just a very successful guy overall. And so he has this quote where he talks about how most businesses actually get 0 distribution channels to work. Poor distribution and not product is the #1 cause of startup failure. And so what we're talking about in this in this book is that we recommend going through this framework, which I'll get to now, called the Bullseye framework, that will help you drill down and figure out what one or two channel will work for your business and will get you that growth that you need in terms of revenue, users, whatever metric you're trying to optimize for. So this is the Bullseye framework. And so this framework is a 5-step process that basically shows you how to figure out what customer acquisition channels, what marketing channels make sense for the product you're working on. So the first thing that we talk about is brainstorming. So we essentially suggest that you go through each of the 19 traction channels and say, what tactics within each of these channels could make sense and could reasonably have a reasonable shot of working for your business, for your product, whatever. And so after going through this, you should have an idea of, here are the 19 channels and some sub-ideas within each of those channels, like Facebook ads. You could have something like, let's try custom audiences, do lookalike audiences, do internationalization of ads, whatever it is. And so in the first step, you brainstorm specific ways that you can use each of these traction channels to get traction. In the next step, you basically rank the ideas that you had in the first step and try and dial in on 3 to 4 channels and ideas within those channels that you think are promising and could make an impact on your business. And so, for example, this might be, if you're selling an info product, one thing you could try is like recruiting new affiliates. That could be one thing to test in the affiliate sphere. Another thing would be maybe running Facebook ads around what targeting an audience that historically has purchased the types of products you have created in the past. And the third could be running a giveaway or a contest just to see how well that works to drive new email subscribers. So once you have your list of ideas, you essentially rank them in order of the ones that are most likely to work. After going through that, you test them. So this is a lot like the lean startup approach, if you guys have heard or are familiar with that. If not, it's totally fine. But essentially, you have this list of ideas, say, running Facebook ads, targeting international audiences. So what you'd want to do then is you would want to test that hypothesis, that that idea that you have and see, will it work or won't it to acquire new customers. Once you go through this test, then you can evaluate, okay, did this traction channel, did this tactic within this traction channel, did it work? Like, did it drive meaningful business? Was it profitable? Was it unable to reach as many people as we thought? Did it work? And if so, why or why not? And so after going through a couple of these different tests, testing the top 2 or 3 ranked ideas that you have, then you want to figure out what works. And so at this point, your goal is to find the 1 or 2 effective channels that work for your business and wring as much traction as you can out of those channels. And so in this case, it means you have tested, and let's say like Facebook ads doing internationalization works really well for you. If that's the case, then what you want to do is double down on Facebook ads as a channel and spend time seeing if you can optimize and improve your current spend on Facebook. So that might be testing new ad creatives, testing new ad copy, adding, targeting new groups through Facebook, targeting different languages, all of these different kinds of things. So to recap, you essentially go from not having a plan for how to acquire customers to now you've run tests in multiple channels. You're working on and doubling down on the one that seems most promising, the 1 or 2, and then you're working to optimize the tactics within that channel that will allow you to acquire as many customers as you possibly can. So doing this process is it utilizes something we call the 50% rule. And so what this rule is essentially that early stage startups, marketers, and founders should be spending half their time on product and half their time on marketing. That, if you guys as affiliates are pushing other people's products, I would say that that rule comes down to spend half of your time researching different audiences, like figuring out where these audiences hang out, figuring out, what they do online, what content they consume, all of that, and then the other half working on getting traction within those audiences and those communities where your target market resides. So this is a quote by Mark Andreessen. This guy's worth like $800 million or something crazy. And so he runs a VC firm very well regarded called Andreessen Horowitz. He's also the founder of Netscape, which is the first internet browser, essentially. And so he says, and this is his quote, many entrepreneurs who build great products simply don't have a good distribution strategy, which is the number one reason why they, as one of the top VC firms in the world, pass on founders and startups that they would otherwise like to back. So after you've gone through this process, I want to cover a few things. So basically, you go through this process, you figure out what channels make sense for you, which ones have tested well, which ones seem promising, and then before doing this whole thing, you want to figure out, what is your goal? Is it to sell $100,000 worth of a product? Is it to hit $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue as a SaaS business, which is my background? Is it to get like 1 million users for some mobile app? So figuring out what your goal is will determine all of your actions as well as what channels you focus on. If your goal is to get to 1 million users, doing something like throwing meetups or conferences or whatever probably doesn't make sense, because that's just not going to scale very well. Whereas doing stuff like advertising, focusing on virality, building massive email lists, doing co-promotions, all of these things over time can actually lead to hitting 1 million users. So once you have a goal, you want to work backwards and figure out the activities that will get you to that goal. We call this moving the needle. So what this means is only focusing on activities that will get you to where you want to go in a meaningful amount of time. So again, to use our earlier example, let's say you wanted to sell $100,000 worth of product. If that product is, $50 or $100, doing something like cold calling or inside sales, or God forbid, like even going door to door or something, doesn't make any sense for where you're trying to go. Like even if you were to sell, like 5-ish of this product a day, that would only get you to like $500 a day, which then means you just have an insanely long period of time before you can actually hit your $100,000 goal. And so in practice, like, this sounds obvious, but a lot of marketers and founders fail to think about this, where they'll do things like putting on a meetup, tweeting at people on social media, trying to build their Twitter followers, and they never think, what if I'm trying to get to $100,000 in revenue? How does increasing my Twitter followers by 1,000 people, or increasing the number of times someone tweets my content by, getting 20 more tweets per content share, how does that get me closer to my $100,000 goal? It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't move the needle often. And so this is something we really encourage people to think about, is like only focus on channels and the tactics within these channels that will get you meaningful traction and will get you closer to your traction goal. So that leads me to the next thing, which is this idea that focusing on traction and product early on, so focusing on building out a product while also focusing on traction, means that when it comes time to launch, you have a product that how people are buying it, how they're coming across it, and it's a product that people have more exposure to because you've been marketing it and gotten feedback from your first customers that you acquired through whatever traction channel. So this this may be less relevant for some affiliates depending on if you're selling other people's products versus building your own. But if you're building your own, testing how your audience responds to a product that you built versus testing how an audience that you acquired by through Facebook ads responds to the same product. Those are very, very different things and will make the product a lot more valuable if you bake in the feedback from the second group to the product when you launch it. So the last thing I want to cover is that Paul Graham, he started an accelerator called YCombinator. They're a seed stage startup accelerator. But he says that a startup is a company designed to grow fast. So the only essential thing that a startup has to do is growth. Everything else we associate with startups follows from growth. Yo, is there music playing?
No, do you hear music?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. Anyway, that's basically all I had for you guys. So that is my quick slideshow, and I'd love to jump into questions and hear what you guys think about everything.
All right. Yeah, I do hear background music as well. Um, hmm. I wonder where that's coming from. Anyway, yeah, if you have questions, we could do one of two things. You can type the questions into the Q&A section, or if you'd like to actually speak out your questions, if you've got a mic available, you can also mention that in the Q&A, and I will unmute you so that you can ask your question directly to Justin. And we'll take questions on all the stuff that was covered here. Or if you've already read the book and you have questions on topics that were covered in other chapters, you're free to ask that as well. Or we can also do questions from just general experience from Justin's the past stuff that Justin did with growth of his last company. So yeah, we're pretty open on the kinds of questions that we'll take. So we've got a question here from Stuart, and he said he'd like to get your thoughts on creating initial trajectory.
Okay. So could you be a little more specific, like creating? What exactly are you trying to create or get initial traction for?
Just waiting for a reply back on that one. And Stuart, if you want to speak directly, I can also unmute you if you'd like. I'm going to unmute you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Stuart.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about the initial trajectory, meaning, when you're first starting up, you need to get like a critical mass built, and so you got to select the channels that'll be most effective to get that initial lift, so that you can get out there, be known, and get that critical mass, so you can get more people, customers and everything, and maybe that helps you figure out which channels are going to be most effective, for the distribution of your product. So I was thinking maybe you had some insights on that.
Yeah. So a couple things. So I mean, often, often there's a lot of confusion, like people trying to figure out what to do to get your first, 5 customers. Is that kind of like what you're talking about? Like, how do I get my first 5 or 10 customers?
Exactly.
Cool. So oftentimes that is much less of a traction channel driven thing, and it's much more just like leveraging your existing network, doing cold emails to people that that are in the space or that would be your potential customers, and just figuring out, because what you want really is not just your first 5 customers, but you want feedback on what you're building, and to see if your potential customers are people that you can reach through sales and like what they think of what you're building. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so a lot of times, like, I try and tell startups, like, until you get like your first 10 or 15 customers, don't even worry about marketing channels and like all of this kind of stuff. Like, because that's so early that you don't even know if you have a product that other people want. Like,
Are you big on
that's
using like surveys and things like that?
honestly just like emailing them, setting up calls, sending them over product demos, and just trying to get their thoughts on what they think of what you're doing. You know, like, is it
Great.
good, bad? Do they like it? Do they not? And then once you get that feedback, then you have the messaging. You can use the messaging that and the things that they've said they like about your product, and take that to more people when you start acquiring people that you don't know through like paid acquisition and whatnot.
Okay,
You know,
thanks.
does that
Appreciate
make
it.
sense?
Yes, thank you.
I'm talking, and I guess I was muted. Yeah, thanks a lot for your questions, Stuart. And I wanted to know if there are any more questions from you guys out there. Um, I had a few comments as well. So while we're waiting for questions to come in, I guess I'll ask Justin what some of the questions and stuff. Um, so I was wondering, like, if you've noticed that sometimes there's a wrong kind of traction where, like, a startup's focusing on a certain kind of traction where it's completely wrong for them.
Yeah, so there that's for sure happens. I mean, if you think about, just if you think about a couple companies, like everyone acquires customers where they don't actually want, like they have customers that don't end up paying them, don't end up converting for a trial, they get refunds or whatever. And so all you're trying to figure out is what how can you minimize the number of customers like these that you get? And more than that, how can you make sure that the customers you do have actually convert, end up paying you and the like? So I think that one thing that startups and marketers too often don't measure is, they measure the total number of customers that sign up through a given channel, but often they don't measure like the revenue generated on a channel basis.
Right.
And so what that means is, like, a lot of times you could be spending AdWords, like money on Google AdWords, and just acquiring customers that never spend any money with you, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. That's something that I had noticed when I was actively running affiliate campaigns was that sometimes you may be measuring opt-in rate for an email list and making your decisions based on that when the ideal measurement could be actual sales and conversions after they opt in. So you may have a channel that may
Mhm.
opt in less, but it's actually spending more money than the people who are um, opting in more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right. Cool. I've got a question from Ben, so I'm going to
I
unmute
think you
you,
just
Ben.
muted yourself.
I'm back on. I was too excited about muting
Okay.
myself. Give me 1 second, Ben. I will unmute you. Okay.
Nana?
Yes, you're live.
Sorry about that. Let's turn the fan off here. Yeah, so you guys talking about customer attribution. Is there any particular data platform that you recommend to measure engagement and revenue recognition for different sources of traction? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would highly recommend Mixpanel. If you just want to kind of like plug and play solution out of the box. Otherwise, if you have a developer or engineer on staff, Keen.io, Keen.io,
Okay.
it's a really incredible tool. It just requires a lot of technical configuration to get set up, but then it's awesome.
So it's all just, I looked into Mixpanel kind of, and it doesn't seem like it's very robust in terms of attribution, but am I just not using it correctly?
Yeah, so you can add different tags where you can say, like, someone signs up from AdWords or something, you can like append the URL string that they signed up at to their user, and so it allows you to like query it and see on a user and channel basis like how everything is working.
Okay.
It does require a little bit of custom configuration. I would shoot them an email, but yeah, overall I really like Mixpanel.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I've played around with mixed panel as well, and go along with what Justin said in terms of actually setting it up. It may take a bit of instrumentation to get things right,
Hmm.
but they've been pretty helpful as well. But once you've got that done, you get some really good insights from them. I'm actually
Definitely.
not as active on there as I should be. Um,
Yeah, I think it's just going to do a little bit of tinkering because I'm working on a site where there's multiple revenue events where it's different amounts for each user, and then I wanted to track back. So I guess I just got to go in there and play with it a bit more.
yeah, and are
Yeah.
you trying to track like a long term
Yep.
lifetime value on that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So like
yeah.
it's different than normal SaaS platforms where you might have like, the same amount rebilling each month. Like it's a different amount for each um, user. Like they could bring in different amounts depending on how much they use the application.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you could tie hook that into their event system, and so when transactions happen, you'd um, fire events to start tracking that.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll look into Keen.io. I was trying to like hack something together with CBV Lab or 202
yeah.
Nana.
Well, I mean, it's possible it wasn't built for multiple conversions in that kind of way, so it would have to be something that you hacked onto it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Stuart, you wanted to confirm it's Mixpanel. That's Mixpanel, and that's one word, .com, if you want to check that out. Ben, are you done with your questions? I can mute you out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, man. Just want to confirm with the next person. Um, Ellie, do you want to ask uh, on audio, or do you just want me to read your question out? All right, so Ellie wants to know, is there a way to harness traction so it does not get out of control for the worse? And I guess you want to know if there are tools out there that would help you do that. Can you kind of clarify what you mean by not getting out of control for the worse as well, please? Unless you understand that, Justin.
No, clarification would be great.
Okay, let's Ellie's come back with more says. Oh, he wants to know if there's something like too much traction during the growth phase that's negative.
Uh, I've never seen it, honestly. Like I don't think anyone's ever like, I have too much customer, like, or too much money coming in. I think the only case in which that's negative is where you're acquiring too many of the wrong customers, and they might be like diluting the quality of your sales calls or support emails or whatever, and just creating a lot of overhead. That's the only time I've ever seen a negative, and in that case, I think you can do things like charge people, you have to be a paying customer in order to email support, or just do better lead scoring or qualification or whatever. But I've never seen an issue with people who get too much traction for self-serve products.
Hmm. All right, great. Thanks. Um, we have we have a question on clarification. That's Keen. That's KEEN.io. And
Yep.
um, they've got a very interesting product as well that I've been checking out lately. Um, Rod, you've got a question. Was wondering if you want to ask that, or should I read that out for you? And while we're waiting for that, I was wondering if you had heard of a startup called Oscar. It's a insurance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the health insurance company.
yeah. I had just heard about them earlier this year and how they had really done well with just growing in the New York area. And I was wondering if you've got any insights on some of the stuff that they've been doing.
Yeah, so they're in an interesting situation. They're a health insurer that has gotten tons of press because they raised like $50 million right off the bat from some very influential startup investors.
Hmm.
And and so they've parlayed that into PR and really owned the kind of like tech startup niche, you
Hmm.
know. So I don't think they have a ton of traction yet, but I think they're doing a really good job of playing the PR game, at least early on.
Right. Yeah, that's something that, I mean, I think as affiliates, that's one channel that affiliates don't always look at is the PR angle, um,
Hmm.
mainly because they don't own the product. And one thing that I like to recommend to people is to try and create a brand out of what you're working on, even if you don't own that product, to create an asset out of that marketing that you're doing, because that's
Hmm.
where the real value is created instead of building someone else's value. And
Yeah.
there have been a few affiliates I've been able to do that and been able to exit with affiliate campaigns that are actually brands um, that provided more value than just linking out to some other website.
Right, right.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's
there are ways to do that, but any PR essentially helps with uh, not only with getting in front of a new audience, but also helps with conversion, you know. Like if
right.
people see something on Washington Post and then get an email or see a Facebook ad about it, they're more likely to convert on that than they were if that ad or email was the first time they've ever seen something.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think that's something that you should spend the time to do for real instead of just putting logos on your landing page that are not really authentic.
Hmm.
Um, Rod has a question. It says, do you have a step-by-step procedure for testing markets and where to find customers?
We do, yeah. So we go more into depth in that in the book. If you want, you can get the first three chapters for free. Go to tractionbook.com, and if you'll see on our website, you just enter your email and we'll mail you out those first few chapters.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we definitely go into that in the book. It's a big question though, so I'll happy to follow up by email after you like read the first couple chapters or whatever.
Yeah. Um, Talking about the book, make sure you guys hang out till the end. We have 5 copies. Is that correct, Justin?
Yeah,
Or yeah, we got 5 copies of the book to give out to whoever's on this webinar. And so if you're not on, you can't win. Any more questions? We've got about maybe 15 minutes before we're done. All right, while we wait, I've got a few more questions on my end. Um, so you talk about doing tasks that move the needle or don't move the needle. Um, is there an easy way to actually determine that? I know that for certain channels, it's pretty easy. So, for example, if you're trying to do AdWords, you could plug in your keyword list and get a an estimate of the monthly volume. But some of these other channels, have you heard of good recommendations for how to figure out whether a particular action or campaign within that channel will be big enough to get that needle moved in a substantial kind of way?
yeah. So you can essentially look at these different channels and see like, okay, if we were to use this channel, how much traction could we expect to get from that? So if you wanted to do like an offline event or something, you could look and say, what is the most popular meetup group on Yelp or sorry, not on Yelp. What is the most popular meetup group that exists for this subject? And if we got that big, would that move the needle for our business?
Right.
Like you can use these different things as kind of proxies to see in a best case scenario, is this something that would be meaningful to us?
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that would involve even if you got that big, you still have to convert that audience. So you have to look at how well you're
Yeah.
converting overall as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool, cool. Um, Looks like we're not getting any more questions coming in. I'll wait maybe an extra minute or two to see if there are any more questions. Then if not, we'll move on to the next portion where we um, pick the winners of the book and then wrap
Great.
up.
Sounds awesome.
All right, so I'll just wait a little bit, and Thanks a lot, Stuart. We're getting some feedback, saying good stuff. I really enjoyed the first portion with the presentation, just to see and hear your thoughts and everything. Um, just from a personal point of view, I liked um, the whole Bullseye framework. It's something that I think some of the better affiliates do, but
Yeah,
it's not something that has been actually presented in a framework format, and kind of broken down step by step. And if you're a new affiliate getting started, I'd really recommend just following this framework and the information that's being shared. You can get a lot just from the first three chapters, but you should buy the book as well and read more about what some of the other founders and have done with the other traction channels.
hmm
Um,
thanks for that.
no problem. So Ben wants to know, what are some ways to explore new acquisition channels?
Yeah, so pay close attention to where your like new channels and new ways, new sites that your audience is spending their time on, and then run tests on those channels. So like a good one now, if you have a B2B audience, I think is Medium and LinkedIn Publishing.
Hmm.
Pretty new channels, not super crowded, built-in like audience to who want to engage with your content. And I think that those sorts of newer channels are well worth testing if your audience spends any sort of time or even shows any sign of spending time on any of these new platforms.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. One thing that you talked about earlier was the whole um, trying to stay out of competitive channels. And I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that there are certain channels that just stopped working as well because everyone's on there. And the ability to get any traction or even profitably advertise on there starts to drop as that competition rises. And and so being first to figure out a new traction channel and really scale it up before anyone notices can be a huge competitive advantage to you. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
Here's another question from Rod. It says, how many users does one need to get VC's attention, and does it matter if they're paid or not?
Can you say that one more time?
He wanted to know how many users do you need to have to get attention from a VC, and does it matter if those users are paid users or not?
Yeah, so often it doesn't matter if they're paid or not.
Hmm.
Um, but what does matter is like you need to figure out where, and using AngelList is amazing for this,
Hmm.
but you can look at what stages and at how much traction similar companies got when, before or around the time that they raised money from investors. Like I highly recommend looking at AngelList, looking at TechCrunch funding announcements, and just seeing like, okay, this company is in a similar vertical or a similar industry. How many users, how much revenue roughly did they have when they raised? And then just aim for something around that target.
Hmm. And I guess that really depends on the stage that you're in as well, where in certain stages you may not need to have any users. It could be just an idea, like if you're maybe trying to get into YC or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Cool. I guess we should start wrapping up. I've got a list of everyone on here on random.org. Let me just make sure that I've got everyone listed here, and then I'll shuffle the list and pick the top 5 people on here. Do you have any shipping restrictions, Justin? Like whether you would be able to ship international or not?
Yeah, so we can't do international. What we could do is um, we could give you a digital, like a gift certificate for a digital copy.
Okay, great. Cool. All right, so I am going to get this randomized. And first winner is Jack. Well, I guess I'll say your last name, Jack Fitzgerald. Email me, Nana, Nana, at tracking202 with your information, or you could put it into the chat. Yeah, congratulations, Jack. Our next winner is Alfred Leong. Congratulations, Alfred. Next winner is Ellie. Congratulations, Ellie. Our next winner after Ellie is Rod Beckwith. Congratulations, Rod. And then final winner is Mike. Mike, I don't know how to say your last name. Maer, as in Mayor or Mayor. Well, I hope I'm not messing up your last name, but congratulations. Please, everyone, email me your information. I've got your info, Jack. I'll contact you to get your mailing address, and then we'll get those books out to you. Looks like you may be out in Australia, Jack, so we'll get a PDF done. All right. Thanks, everyone. And then did you want to give the URL for the Traction book and also the bonus website?
Yeah, so do you want to just mail those out? But it's tractionbook.com.
Okay.
And then we can mail out the bonuses.
All right, we'll mail out the bonuses. Tractionbook.com. Everyone, definitely highly recommend purchasing the book if you didn't win. There's a lot of really interesting and informative interviews from some of the leading founders, and you'll learn something for sure. And then the other thing is that if you purchase a copy of the Traction book, send me a receipt of your order. I have a little bonus that I put together for free use of Tracking 202 for 3 months, which is a minimum almost a $300 value if you are on the minimum plan. So just to support Justin and Gabriel and on this book, I wanted to offer this. I know a lot of you have used it to get traction with your affiliate campaigns, and so I'd like to be able to help you grow faster. A few questions. My email is Nana, that's Nana, at tracking202.com. That's Nana at tracking202.com. Thanks a lot for your time on here, everyone. And I really want to thank Justin for taking time out of his day to present this information for us. Do you have anything to wrap up before we're done, Justin?
No, I hope this is valuable, people. Happy to do it. Thanks for stopping by. If you want to check out the first 3 chapters for free, tractionbook.com, just enter your email and we'll send them your way. And thanks for spending time.
All right. Thanks a lot, Justin. It was good having you on today. And thank you, everyone, once again.